Hello everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Muhammad Hafiz. I work as Associate Professor in NTIU University in Malaysia, and mainly I teach geotechnical and dam engineering for civil engineer students, and I'm going to speak today about conflict and cooperation in the countries of the Nile Basin. This is my email for Muhammad.Hafiz, new NT EduMai. Okay, this presentation is prepared for 2023 Water Conference for United Nations and it's supposed to be presented on March 23. Okay, what actually we have in between Nile Basin country? It seems so far it is a conflict, but can we turn this conflict to cooperation? Can we have a roadmap for the Nile country to change or move from conflict zone to cooperation zone? Mainly, what's the difference between cooperation and conflict in sociology term? Is that the cooperation refers to two or more people working together to achieve common goal, while conflict is deliberate action by someone or some group to prevent the action from another people. Okay, before we talk on technical relate to Nile Basin country, we talk about some fact. The fact that the Nile River, it's considered one of, or maybe the longest river in the world, is around 6,700 kilometers, and the length of navigation is something around 4,000 kilometers. It made of a few rivers, not only one rivers. There is a river coming from Ethiopia, which is a Blue Nile River. Another one from Ethiopia was what you call Atbara in Sudan and Egypt, but in Ethiopia they call it Tekizi. And we have also Sobat from Ethiopia. So most of the Nile branches actually is coming from Ethiopia, while from the Victoria Lake we have the White Nile, which pass through many countries. Estimated the water come to Sudan and to Egypt in terms of the unified Nile is around 84 billion cubic meter per year. Okay, so all right, so this is actually the main fact about Nile River. Live in the Nile River country around 530 million. That is based on 2018 studies. While within the valley itself or within the basin itself is almost half or 50% of them. It's around 270 million are living within the basin. The country which shares the Nile Basin are Burundi, Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda. Almost 11 countries, but mainly the eastern part of the Nile, which we call it the Nile from Ethiopia, it's only 3 countries or 4 countries share, which is Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt mainly, and Eritrea also. They have one small river coming from the Tekizi. All right, here is the area within the Nile Basin and the area outside the Nile Basin. As you can see here, for example, Egypt is present almost around 9.4% of the Nile Basin, while the Nile itself, in Nile Valley in Egypt, is present as around 33 of Egypt in terms of area. Okay, here we come to the most critical part, which it is rainfall, the rate of rainfall in the Nile country. As you can see, we have a very rich country in terms of rainfall. Like Kenya, we have around 1,050 mm per year. We have Ethiopia is 1,084 mm per year. We have a country like Congo is around 1,146 mm per year. We have small or medium country receiving medium precipitation like Eritrea. We have around 490 mm. Uganda receive around 1,200 mm. The poorest country in that, or the most dry country, is Egypt. You look to Egypt here, it's receiving only 20 mm per year. Compared to the rest of the Nile countries, Nile Basin country, the 10 or the 11 countries, you have 10 countries. The minimum rainfall is in Sudan is around 260, while Sudan rainfall is almost 13-fold of Egyptian rainfall. While if you want to compare Ethiopia or Kenya or Uganda to Egypt, it's very huge. It's very huge. So a country like Uganda, it receives almost 60 times higher than Egypt. Country like Ethiopia, almost the same things, almost 660 times higher than Egypt. Country like Tanzania is almost 50 times or 52 times higher than Egypt. Country like South Sudan is receiving almost 50 times higher than Egypt. So the most dry country in the Nile River basin is Egypt. It's only 20 mm per year. Here's this map showing that very low rainfall in the north of the Nile Basin country and very high rainfall in the south part of the Nile Basin country. Having very low rainfall is a big problem. Having very high rainfall is also a big problem. So we expect to have kind of cooperation between those countries in order to have a balance between all countries and cooperate to fulfill the requirement for growth and for people living. For example, the whole countries of the 11 Nile basins country receive around 7,000 billion cubic meter per year, while in the Nile basin itself only is around 1,660 billion cubic meter per year. Out of 1,660 billion cubic meter, out of it almost 60% goes to Ethiopia. Ethiopia produces almost around 963 billion cubic meter per year. It's almost around 60 to 20% of the total rainfall of the Nile basin, while the rest produce much less than that. Okay, how much of all this water, whether you want to refer to the 7,000 billion cubic meter or which fall on the all countries basins, not only Nile basin by itself, while in the Nile basin itself it falls around 1,660 billion cubic meter. Okay, out of all this, how much goes to Egypt? Not only Egypt and Sudan. Mainly in Egypt. Egypt received from the Nile 55.5 billion cubic meter. 55.5 billion cubic meter only. All right, so that is a problem. We have in Egypt a very high population living on only 55.5 billion cubic meter compared to the rest of the countries in the basin. No, they receive much larger than that. Okay, so it reached at the boundary of Egypt around 84 billion cubic meter per year. Egypt take 55.5 for itself and give Sudan 18.5 billion, and the total is 74 billion cubic meter, while there is 10 billion cubic meter goes to rainfall. That is a core reason of the problem between African country. Okay, or looking to Egypt. Why Egypt received 55.5? Okay, they think it is too much for Egypt. Let's see the fact. This is a population of the Nile Basin country. You have two main countries here, like Egypt. This population is between 2012 and 2020. In 2012, Egypt has around 88 million population, while in 2020 is around 100 million population. Now into 2023 is reaching around 105 million population. While Ethiopia in 2012 it has around 92 million. By 2020 become 112, expecting by 2023 to around 115 million. All countries in the Nile Basin are increasing. The growth, the population growth is really increasing. For example, Congo within 8 years from 2012 to 2020 increased almost 20 million from 69 in 2012 to 89 2020. So generally one of the main problem of the Nile Basin country is a high population growth. Okay, this is what we predict in 2030 and 2050. For example, you look to Egypt, it is in 2030 the population will reach to 120 million, and in 2050 will increase to 153 million. You look to Ethiopia in 12, it is 140 million, in 2030 is 140 million. In 2050, it will become, in 2050 will become around 190. It will increase almost 50 million within 20 years. Egypt will increase almost around 30 million within 20 years, between 2030 to 2050. The other country follows the same pattern. So population growth in the Nile Basin is one of the problem, and actually is induce a lot of pressure on the governments. Okay, here is a table to show the population, the growth of GDP. Of course, when the population increase, generally the GDP has to be also increased. But actually the rate of GDP growth is much less than the population growth. That is second reason for Nile Basin country. You look to Egypt in 2012, the growth was around, the rate of growth is around 2.2. In 2019 is around 5.6. In Ethiopia is really achieving very good economic growth. In 2012 was around 8.6%. In 2019 is around 8.3. It's almost constant. Many countries like Rwanda also is almost constant. It's high rate. While there is country like Sudan, the growth it is not growth, it is negative. They are getting poorer for many reasons, which we will discuss later. Okay, if you look to the water used in Nile Basin country, you will find out most of the countries, they use the water for agriculture and drinking water. Agriculture and drink, while maybe only Egypt, which use the water for other than that is for industry. So the industry element for the Nile countries is actually in some countries is almost zero, or a little bit is not really corresponding to the number of the population in the country. One of the reason here, and this is actually is a core reason for the being quite poor countries, that most of the Nile Basin country is considered the big farm to some European country, where they provide a lot of food, vegetable, whatever, from their country for export. So it is okay to export. We have no objection with that. But Nile Basin country should not export raw material. They should at least manufacture by 25%. So instead of exporting timber as a log, no, they have to export the timber in terms of furniture, in terms of material which can be used for other industry. But to export raw material just straight away like this without adding value by increasing the percentage of industry or by manufacture it at least by 25%, that will help the GDP for that countries and also will elevate the poverty in that country. So one of the reason for poverty in Nile countries is they export raw material without adding value by manufacturing. Here is some statistic on how much water goes to agriculture, how much go to industry, how much go to service. As you can see, this is between 2012 and 2017. As you can see, for the industry, it is not really much. It is around 19%, and in year 2000, in 2012, it's almost increased by 2%. In 2017, increased by also 2%. But agriculture remained almost constant. Okay, what the key to improve the GDP for Nile Basin country is to increase this sector, increase the industry, increase the manufacture. So instead of exporting the raw material as a raw, no, they must add value by manufacture it by at least 25%. Hydrology and future climate change to the Nile Basin country. As we can see in the screen here, this study is between 1986 to 2005. That one in the change in average precipitation, and also to 2018. This is future one to 2081 to 2100. As you can see here, the change here, the yellow color is showing, indicating the dry part of the world in general. You look to the Nile Basin country, you find the north part is getting drier even in future, while the south part of the Nile Basin country like Congo, like Ethiopia, no, they are going to receive more water. So more water will cause too much flood to that country and destroy economy, while dry in the north also will cause too much suffering to the people there. So both they have problem, and the problem of South Nile Basin country is a solution for the north, country. So we can actually cooperate to complement each other. Here is a study on the impact of climate change on hydrology of only Blue Basin Nile, not the whole Nile. As you can see, over years until 100, the rainfall is getting less and less, and this is a kind of increasing of the world or planet temperature that cause the rainfall to become less and less over years. All right, we are still living here. We are still living until 2020 to 2040. We are somewhere here. We are okay until now. But after 2040, no, the rainfall will get less and less, while the evaporation will increase at the same time. This because due to the increasing of the Earth's temperature. So we will have a lot of problem here. We won't have enough rain for the countries. Okay, as we said earlier, the Nile is made of mainly a few branches. One or main branches come from Ethiopia, which it is Blue Nile and Tekizi, which the Arab call it Adbara. So this is Adbara or Tekizi, and this is Blue Nile. As you can see, the monthly average flow, it fluctuates from month to month. Some months is very dry. You look to Tekizi or Adbara, is very, very little amount, while only on the summer months the flood increase. You can see in July, August, September, Adbara or Tekizi river increase. The same pattern apply to Blue Nile, but maybe the flood season is longer than Adbara or Tekizi. The flow start increase from July, increase more to August, September, October. So the 4 months of the summer, or we call it the flood, that 4 months actually provide almost around 35 billion cubic meter out of around 49 cubic meter, which is the annual flow of the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile over the year, the total flow is around 49 billion cubic meter. 35 billion cubic meter come during the summertime. It comes from these two branches mainly, Tekizi or Adbara and the Blue Nile. That's why the flow for the Blue Nile, we can look at it from year 1921 until 2015 is almost 100 years. You can see in some years we have high flow. It reached almost around 70 billion, while the average is 49 or actually 48.5. But some years we get 70 billion in some years, while in other years we can reach almost 20 billion, which meaning around 40% of the average. We have a drought in the year 1913. The flow was almost 20 billion. So when the Nile, Blue Nile provide only 20 billion, at that time the Egyptian will have no water at all, even for drinking. So for the Egyptians, they must build dam to avoid this problem. So once in 1913, after the Egyptian learned the lesson, then they have to build the Aswan High Dam in order to maintain some storage for future. So the drop of Blue Nile flow happened many times. It's almost happened every 20 years. So we have here the period between 1940 to 1949, it's almost 10 years. The flow reached around 38 million, while in the drought during 1978 to 1987, it reached almost around 35 to 36 million cubic meter, which is not sufficient at all. And all this before Ethiopia and Sudan start building some dams. So the annual flow of the Blue Nile at the border between Ethiopia and Sudan is almost around 48.5. And here is one of the problems which we're going to talk about it later. Okay, the second water source for the Nile is a White Nile. White Nile has mainly two flow. One come from Victoria Lake, and the one come from Malkal near to the South Sudan. So this two source provide the White Nile water, which combine or which meet the Blue Nile near to Khartoum in Sudan and form the unified Nile. All right, as you can see also here for Victoria Lake, the average rainfall or the average storage is fluctuate too much. fluctuate too much. So for example, since year 1960, the storage was around 600 billion cubic meter. After that increase almost to 2,000 billion cubic meter, meaning 2 trillion cubic meter, and drop over years, drop then increase. Recently, since last 10 years, the flow was improving. It's reached even above the 2 trillion cubic meter. But we cannot depend on the natural flow of the Victoria Lake, because as you can see in 2019, for example, or 2015, is above 2 trillion cubic meter, the storage, while in sometimes it reached to 1 trillion cubic meter here in year 1977, for example. It is 1 trillion cubic meter, while in 2015 or 16 was above 2 trillion cubic meter. So the flow for Victoria is really changing too much over time. Okay, here is a key issue which actually consider the main cause for the problem between Egypt and Sudan in one side and the rest of the Nile Basin country. As you can see here, this is the hydrology station in a place called Donkola, which south of Aswan, and this is the last hydraulic and hydrology station before the water goes to Aswan Dam. As you can see here, the total flow passed through Donkola yearly is around 84 billion cubic meter, and here is the flow over months, and you can see in July, August, September, October, mainly these flood months which receive the most of the water. That before the building any barrier like the Ethiopian dams. Okay, as you can see, this is what Egypt and Sudan to get is around 84 billion cubic meter. This 84 billion cubic meter come through what you call it runoff. So as earlier I showed to you that we have around 1,700 billion cubic meter of water run within the Nile Basin valley, but how much of that goes to the Nile? As mentioned at the end, it end up by 84. So from 1,660 billion cubic meter fall in the Nile Basin country, only 84 billion goes to the runoff, which actually used by Egypt and Sudan. So the reason is, here the problem here is a runoff coefficient. Runoff coefficient represents the fraction of the rainfall that reach to the river system and is available for the downstream user. So as you can see here, the runoff coefficient is very little. For example, you look to White Nile in the year between 1960 to 1998. You look to the White Nile. It was the runoff coefficient between 60s for the 30 years, between 60s to 90s, it was 0.07, while between 90s to 2015, it was 0.05. It dropped instead of increasing. So the first 30 years between 1960 to 1990, the runoff is 0.07. While between 1990 to 2015, it is 0.05, which shouldn't be that. It should increase because we have the technology now to increase the runoff from 0.07 to make it 0.1 or 0.11 to increase, not to drop. And this drop, as you see, it happened in many countries, especially countries located in the White Nile. That is indicating that we are not really fully utilizing the possibility to increase the runoff in White Nile, and we have a lot of rooms to improve that. So to solve the problem, to get enough runoff to the dry country like Egypt and Sudan, mainly Egypt, it is located here in the South country. We should help the South country to increase the runoff coefficient. Increasing the runoff coefficient, that will help to improve the runoff water which goes to the river. Then we can use it for running or building dams, or we produce hydraulic energy, and at the end the water can go to the dry country like Egypt and Sudan. Here is the power capacity in the Nile Basin country. I will focus mainly on Egypt, Ethiopia, and South Sudan, because these three countries is a problem and the solution at the same time. You look to the Egypt, we have around 45,000 megawatt per year. Per hour. Produce 45,000 megawatt per hour. But out of that, how many percent depend on the hydropower? It's only 6%. So 6% out of 45,000 are hydropower, which come from mainly Aswan Dam, which produce around 2,800 megawatt. While you look to Ethiopia, the total power they have is around 4,300 megawatt only, while the population is almost same like Egypt. While out of this 4,300 megawatt, 88% depend on the hydro, where they produce around 3,800 megawatt. That before the Renaissance Dam. So after Renaissance Dam, many will increase. So as you can see, Egypt is not really depend or making full use or making much use of the hydropower, even we have the high dam. But we are dependent mainly on the thermal power, where we produce around 41,300 megawatt hour in thermal. We pay for it. And the hydropower is only present almost 6%. In Ethiopia, the hydropower present 88.5%. In Sudan, South Sudan, actually South Sudan is very low in terms of power utilization or use. There is no enough data, but we know that they are the poorest country within the Nile Basin country, and they should improve. The improvement for South Sudan and provide them enough power and electricity, this actually presents a solution to Egypt. So here is a problem to South Sudan, and that problem actually, if we solve it for the South Sudan, it will help Egypt as well. While the other country like Tanzania, they produce around 1,400 megawatt per hour. They depend on hydropower by around 40%. And here we have to mention that Egypt government is building a new dam in Tanzania, which will produce around 2,100 megawatt, almost 30% higher than what they have today. So you add here 2,100. So at the end of the building of that dam, Tanzania will have something around 3,500 megawatt, and the amount of, or the percentage of hydropower will increase to almost 80% or 85%. So Egypt, they are contributing and they are helping to build them in Tanzania. We build them in Uganda as well. So we, as Egyptian, we went out through Nile Basin country. We extend our hand. We help them to build them as long as that can improve the runoff. So when we build them to countries, actually we are not taking their money, their water. We are only improving this runoff coefficient. When we improve the runoff coefficient, the country can have enough runoff water in the river, they can use for producing electricity for themselves, and the discharge of the dam will go to Egypt. So it will be multi-purpose, all benefit the two countries. We produce electricity of the runoff water for the Uganda, for Tanzania, for South Sudan, and the water at the end goes to Egypt. So it is win-win situation. The challenge, what challenge do we have? Actually, when we look to the Nile Basin country, each country has its own challenge inside itself and with its neighbor as well. But I cannot talk about all challenge. I will focus mainly on the main challenge, which really creating a lot of conflict between Nile Basin country. The greatest one is the Ethiopian dam, which it is built now in Ethiopia in the Blue Nile. At the border between Egypt, between Sudan and Ethiopia. It's called Grand Ethiopia Renaissance Dam. In brief, we call it GERD, G-E-R-D. It is made of around 1,780 meter RCC concrete dam. The concrete height is around 155 meter, while the water height is around 140 meter. Okay. They have around 13 turbines, supposedly to produce around 5,150 megawatt. All right, and they have here to ensure that they can store more water than the topography allows them. So they build what we call it saddle dam. This one of the largest or the longest dam we have in the world is 5,200 meter rockfield dam. That rockfield dam is to close the gap between these two mountains, and that will help Ethiopia to store more water in the reservoir. All right. While initially the plan for this dam, which at that time 30 years ago they call it X dam or border dam. The height of the dam was something around 90 or 95 meter, not 155 meter, and the storage was around 11 billion cubic meter. Now, mainly recently after the Egyptian revolution, between day and night, they has increased the reservoir capacity from 11 billion cubic meter to 74 billion cubic meter. Even the latest survey shows that this reservoir can carry up to 85 billion cubic meter. But what written in the website and the information between scholars, it is 74. But in reality, can goes to 85 billion cubic meter. And this is a saddle dam. This is one of the biggest or greatest challenge between Nile Basin country. So here is some details about it. All right. Okay. Here we have to stop here. The efficiency factor for the dam is around 28.6%. That is very low efficiency factor. So you can put whatever number you wish of the number of turbine in your dam, but do you have enough water to run all this turbine? This is what we call capacity factor or dam coefficient factor. So Ethiopia has initially installed 16 turbines. They canceled 3. Now they have 13 turbines. 11 of them is in high level. Supposedly is a Francis turbine. Produce around 350 megawatt, while the other turbine in the low level, it produces around 350 megawatt. Okay, so we have 13 turbine. Can the water reservoir or the natural flow of the Blue Nile can sustain all this big number of turbine? For sure, no. That's why the capacity factor is too low. So if Ethiopia improves the capacity factor, that will help to solve the problem with its neighbor. So as you can see here, the Nile, which goes to Sudan and Egypt, which start combined between Blue Nile and White Nile in Khartoum. So as you can see, the elevation of the Blue Nile is very high, because in Tana Lake, the starting point of the Blue Nile, is above 2,000 meters above the sea level, while the White Nile is much less, it's around 1,200, 1,300 above the sea level. All right, so Ethiopia potentially has a very great potential for hydropower. And I as an expert in dam engineering, actually I have no objection for Ethiopia to build as many number of dam in the Blue Nile, because they have the topography to do that. But the problem, you cannot build big or large dam. You should build small dam, sectional dam, which use the water only for producing electricity. So when the flood comes next year, your dam is almost empty. Then you can refill. But having huge storage like what we have in the Renaissance Dam, that is a big problem. Big problem to Ethiopia and also to Egypt. So here is a Blue Nile. As I said, Ethiopia, instead of building huge dam, they can build many small dams, and that will produce even more electricity to the local people and without causing any trouble. So that is a natural flow at the border between Ethiopia and Sudan. As you can see, during July, August, September, October, they receive almost around 35 billion cubic meter out of 48.5 billion cubic meters, the average flow at the border. So this only 48.5 billion cubic meter, which actually the cause of the problem between the basin country, especially the eastern part of the Nile. Okay, okay. The problem, Ethiopia and Egypt and Sudan try their best to solve the problem among themselves, but they fail. Then for the last 10 years, they try to find a compromise, but as I said, they totally fail to reach to solution. That's why Mr. Trump, the American president, has interfered personally to solve the problem. Even Trump failed to solve the problem. Okay, what actually is the problem? In very simple term, I'm not going to use complicated term. Okay, you see here is a Blue Nile, here is the upstream, here is the downstream. Now the Blue Nile, or Ethiopia is building GERD, all right, and for a time being, or at present, is not full yet. And after GERD, we have Sudanese dams. We have 3 Sudanese dams: Resource, Sinar, and Marwi. And at the end, we have High Aswan Dam. So today, as I'm talking in March 2023, the situation, we have little amount of water in GERD, while the Sudanese dams all are full, and the Aswan Dam also full. Okay, let's see after filling the GERD dam, what will happen. So after filling the GERD dam, the dam will be fully filled by almost 2025, or by end of 2024. All right, then the Sudanese dams also will be full of water, while the High Aswan Dam will be almost as a dead storage. That is a problem. That filling up huge reservoir in GERD, that will cause High Aswan Dam to reach to its dead storage. Okay, that is during filling and operation. But in other cases, when we have drought, as I mentioned as I mentioned here, Blue Nile has drought lasts almost for 10 years. Between time to time, every 20 years we get a drought for 10 years. So during drought, for long drought, or we'd call it prolonged drought, what will happen? It can for 10 years not enough water for GERD, not enough water for Sudanese dam, not enough water for High Aswan Dam. This would be the end of Egypt life in terms of population, in terms of state, in terms of everything, because it can last for 10 years. 10 years, not enough water for GERD, for Renaissance Dam, and of course not enough water for Sudanese dam. For sure won't have enough water for High Aswan Dam and Egyptian. All right. At that time we don't have water even for drinking. All right. This is a problem which we must find solution for it. We must find solution for it. All right. Okay. Just for example, did this event happen before? Yes, it happened before. You look here to the drought years between 1978 to 1988. 10 years, the Blue Nile was supplying less water supply to High Dam, to Nasser Lake, until the level, the water storage in Aswan Dam reached to 150.6 above sea level. 150.6 above sea level, it is almost 0.6 meter above the dead storage, because the dead storage for the turbine fixed recently in High Aswan Dam is 150. So it was only 0.6 meter above the dead storage, and that without having two big dams on the Blue Nile, like Renaissance Dam and Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia and Marwi in Sudan. So now after 1988 we got two dams, two extra dams. So if this drought session happen again with existing of Marwi in Sudan, with existing of Renaissance Dam, what will happen? That will be the end of Egypt as people, as civilization, as a state. So here, this is a very serious problem which can spark war between countries. So if we don't have a global solution to solve this problem, then we have to expect a big conflict between that country. We will not allow Egypt and Egypt to die, or Egyptian to die. Okay, so the international and United Nations, International Committee and United Nations should interfere at beginning before the things get worse. All right. Okay, this is some scenarios on what will happen after or during filling of the Renaissance Dam, whether 5 years, 6 years. It depends mainly on how much water we have in the High Dam. But we have three scenarios here, depend on how much water we have in the High Dam. But all the three scenarios agree that after 4 years of the filling of the Renaissance Dam, the level in the Nasser Lake or Aswan Dam will reach to the dead storage. So now Ethiopia in August 2023, they are going to fill up Renaissance Dam for the fourth time, and next year 2024 they will finalize the filling of the Renaissance Dam, and by that time, by September or October 2024, it's expecting the level at High Aswan Dam to reach almost to the dead storage. Okay, does this event happen before? Does this happen before? Yes, it happened. Okay, you look here to Turkana Lake or Lake Turkana in Kenya, which one of the most beautiful natural lake in Kenya, which get its water from one of the Omo River in Ethiopia. All right. So after Ethiopia built a series of dams on Omo rivers, the biggest one is GB3. What happened to the dam? The water dropped 40 meters. So at the beginning dropped 7 meters. then drop 22, then drop 40 meters until this what you see here. This is the bottom of Turkana Lake, which was before GB3 was one of the largest natural lake. So is it going to be repeated in Egypt? Yes, it's high possibility that the Nasser Lake, the largest man-made lake in Africa, it might face the same fate of Turkana Lake. So we, as Egyptian, as Egypt state, we cannot afford that Egypt Lake to become a repetition of Turkana Lake. Turkana is in Kenya. Kenya, as I showed earlier, even there is no Turkana, if there is no Omo River at all to Kenya, shouldn't be a big problem because they have other source of water where the rainfall rate is around 1,200 mm per year. But Egypt cannot offer what or accept what Kenya has accepted, because Egypt, the rainfall is only 20 mm per year. Okay, is a problem between Egypt and Ethiopia will end up by completing of Renaissance Dam? No, it won't end up by completing of the Renaissance Dam, because the Renaissance Dam it has been designed to be at the end of the downstream of other 3 dams. So Ethiopia is planning to build 4 dams. The first is Renaissance Dam or GERD. Then we have 3 more dams, Dam Mandia, Mabila and Kardobi. These are 3 dams which plan to be built on the upstream of Renaissance Dam. The total storage of the 4 dams, including Renaissance, it will be 2 billion cubic meter. While, as I mentioned earlier, the total flow of the Blue Nile at the Sudan, Ethiopia, it was only 48 billion cubic meter. Means the 4 dams are capable to store almost 4 floods, 4 yearly flood, without allowing one water to go to the downstream. So the capacity of these 4 dams is 202 billion cubic meter, while the natural flow runoff as the Sudan, Ethiopia is only it's less than 50 billion cubic meter. So this is coming to be one of the biggest problem between the eastern part of the Nile. Okay, that in Ethiopia. So what about Egypt? Egypt is this is Egypt water demand between year 1990 to 2050, meaning 6 years. As you can see, the amount of water per citizen almost in the year 2000 we almost reached to the poverty line meaning 1,000. So it was around 1,058 cubic meter per year, while 25 years later in 2050 it is 620. Actually, this is wrong information. It is now 2023, it is around 520 cubic meter. That without including the shortage due to the Renaissance Dam. If no Renaissance Dam, it is expected by 2050 it will be around 460 cubic meter per citizen, which means almost less than 50% of the poverty line. We know the poverty line, the water poverty line is 1,000 cubic meter per citizen. So this is the situation in Egypt now and in future, that without including the Renaissance Dam. So what if we add the Renaissance Dam? It will be a disaster. So we look here, does Egypt maximize the use of the water? Yes, we as the Egyptian we try to maximize the use of the water to the best we can. For example, we treat the domestic wastewater. In 2001 it was only 0.7 billion cubic meter. In 2017 we treat 2.5 billion cubic meter. Yearly, recently in 2022, after opening a few treatment plant, we reach almost to 5 billion cubic meter. That is a domestic waste water which has been treated and reused for other, mainly for irrigation. The same apply to the industrial wastewater. We treat almost 6.7 billion cubic meter yearly. So and also the agricultural drainage water is almost 8.5 in 2017. Now it's reaching to 10 billion. So the total reuse water in Egypt is almost above 22 billion cubic meter. All right. So putting any blame on Egypt that we are not really maximize the use, actually it is not true, because we try to maximize the use of each drop of water in Egypt. Okay, is that enough for Egypt? No, it's not enough. So in 2015, the amount of the exported water, or what we call the virtual water, which we have export, cost Egypt to import 49 billion cubic meter of virtual water. Virtual water in terms of grains, in terms of meat, in terms of other product. So in 2015, we import almost 50 billion cubic meter of virtual water. It comes in other form like grains, like meat, like milk product, all right, oil. Okay, in 2023, the amount increased, almost reaching to 55 billion cubic meter, and this be translated into dollar, cent and dollar. So it's really cost Egypt too much. All right. So that is the first challenge. The second challenge is in South Sudan, is what you call Sudut swamp. We have a very large piece or sector of South Sudan, which it is actually mainly swamp, which called Sudut swamp. This is how it looks like. This is how the South Sudanese people live in. All right. It is a big problem for them. It is a big problem for them. We should extend our hand to help them to have a better life. We are in 21st century. We should not allow a community to live such life. The problem here, actually solving the problem here, will benefit the South Sudanese and also benefit Egypt. As you can see, the waterway of the White Nile in the Sudut swamp area, it's wasting a lot of water. There is a lot of water being wasted during evaporation and groundwater as well. Okay, facing the challenge, we cannot face or we cannot solve any of that challenge unless we extend helping hand to each other. Okay, we should trust each other. We should extend our hand to help. All right, and you are not helping him or he helping you, but we are helping each other. Okay, in terms of the first challenge, which it is Ethiopian dam, Ethiopian government keeps saying that they can produce around 550 megawatt. Yes, I agree with them. Yes, you can produce 5,150 megawatt hour, but for how long? Even if the reservoir is full, you can produce this amount of power maybe for 1 week or 2 weeks. It will never remain for the whole years, because if you do it for the whole years, you need another reservoir on the top of what you have. All right. So because you have 13 turbine to run 13 turbine to produce that amount, that won't be an economical solution. The economical solution to make sure or to ensure that you are running all the or most of the turbine, you need to run your turbine to produce amount or to discharge amount of water which it is 1,450 cubic meter per second. If you discharge 1,450 cubic meter per second, that will ensure you running at least around 5 to 6 turbine continuously 24 hours 365 days. All right. While if you think you can produce 5,150, yes, you can produce for a very short while during the flood, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Then your reservoir will drop too much. All right. So here is the solution. Okay, if you want to keep the reservoir with that amount of water, it's okay. Now we cannot solve it because it's already built. Okay, but you must guarantee that you can produce at least, or can you discharge from your turbine at least 1,450 cubic meter per second out of your turbine, and that will allow you to run at least around 5 to 6 turbine. And this 5 to 6 turbine will allow you to produce something around 2,100 megawatt. So you are not producing 5,150 megawatt. You cannot produce it for full year, but for the full year you can produce only 2,100 megawatt. Only that it will be sufficient for you to run over the year, and also to discharge enough water. That will be enough water for Sudan and Egypt without causing any problem. Okay, how to encourage Ethiopia to produce that amount, 1,450 cubic meter per second, without causing any economical harm to them, because they have also to benefit. So I propose one solution here. First, to produce the electricity should be used for other product. So I propose here is building aluminum simulator hub near the Renaissance Dam, because that kind of industry consume a lot of electricity, and the aluminum as a material now in the global market, the price is increasing yearly. So to ensure that Ethiopia can produce this amount of water, which will be around 2,100 megawatt per hour, and if we encourage Ethiopia to invest, or rich country in the region to invest in building a big hub of aluminum industry nearby, that will ensure enough electricity, enough water supply discharge from the turbine, and both will improve the GDP for Ethiopia by adding value by exporting aluminum, mainly because they have the sedimentation from the rivers, which is kaolin and clay mineral, which it is needed for aluminum. You have a lot of aluminate in the sedimentation. So mainly the aluminum industry is built nearby them, because they consume a lot of electricity, and they have to search for cheap electricity, cheap megawatt. That in terms for GERD or Renaissance Dam. The second problem is the South Sudan. South Sudan, as we have seen, is a swampy area, and the plain is flooded all the time. So Egypt has proposed since almost 50 years ago to help South Sudan by building or constructing what you call jungle canal, which it is around 340 kilometer, and this canal can be used to drain partially drain some of the water of the swampy area, and have increased the runoff coefficient. Then it will be filled with water, and that water will go to Egypt. And this swampy area, instead of being swampy, no, it will be a better land for plantation. So the South Sudanese people can convert this swampy area into an economical land by using for agriculture. What happened to this great project? After Egypt has investing millions of dollars in digging the canal, then the civil war started in South Sudan, and they burned all the Egyptian machinery, and it was too much trouble and too much losses. So we have to cooperate together to help each other, South Sudanese people and Egyptian, by constructing this canal, because it will be win-win. It's not only Egyptian going to win, but also South Sudanese going to win. That is one solution. But is it sufficient? This canal will provide something around 5 billion cubic meter. Part of it will go to Sudan and part go to Egypt. So Egypt will benefit by 2 or 3 billion cubic meter. Can this 3 billion cubic meter compensate the losses of the water due to the Renaissance Dam? For sure, no. It will be even less than 10% of the what we expect. So we need to find a permanent solution for this crisis, not only for Egypt but for the north area of Africa. So we have to look to the Congo River. Congo River is one of the largest river after Amazon River. The amount of water in the Congo River huge. It's enough to discharge or drain 1 trillion cubic meter of water yearly in the Atlantic Ocean. So 1 trillion, 1,000 billion cubic meter of water is drained from Congo River to the Atlantic Ocean, while the north part of Africa, as you can see, is dry. So I call and invite the international community, mainly United Nations, World Bank, to invest in producing or having some connection between Congo River and this dry area, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Chad. We, instead of wasting or draining all the 1 trillion cubic meter in the Atlantic Ocean here, why not we just take 10% of it, 100 billion cubic meter only. From this point, we connect it to the Chad Lake, the lake of the Chad, which getting dry yearly and become desert nowadays. And from that lake, we split the water in the form of Y shape, where it goes to Egypt, go to Libya, go to Sudan. So we can have a collective investment from these 3 countries with support of World Bank to provide kind of connection or link between these 2 regions. This is what we have in Congo. Yearly, we have high flood, large flood, which people are dying. Cities being destroyed. Country being drowned underwater. So having enough water in Congo is not actually a privilege for the Congo people, because they are dying due to huge flood. So we can find win-win solution here by reducing the amount of water in Congo River and provide it to the poor people in the North Africa, which is really having very little water, and after building the Renaissance Dam will have even less water. So my proposal here, which I have proposed to Egyptian government since 2015, is to build a tunnel somewhere from the Congo River, goes up to Chad and drain its water into Chad Lake. And from Chad Lake, we can have some connection like Y shape. One goes to Egypt and Sudan, and one goes to Libya. So is it impossible? Not. It is possible. This photo I'm showing to you, it is a tunnel between 2 states in Malaysia here where I live. They importing water from north state to south state, and the length of the tunnel is around 150 kilometers. If we can have 150 kilometers in Malaysia, we can have 1,000 kilometers between the 3 countries. So I propose to Egypt, Sudan, Libya as well, Chad, 4 countries to connect to the Congo River through underground tunnel, not through a surface connection as been proposed by some experts, is to connect the Congo Basin to the White Nile Basin, and that there is a difference in elevation, something around 250 meters. All right, so the Congo River is lower than the White Basin by around 250 meters, which creates too much trouble. While here, if we think about underground tunnel from one of this elevation, which is around, say, between 380 above sea level to 400 to 350 above sea level, connect from this zone, we connect underground water tunnel up to the Chad. The Chad Lake is around 180 meter above sea water. So you have 180 to 170 meter difference in head between this position and the Chad. So the water will run under gravity. You no need pump station, you no need electricity. The water will run under gravity from this high altitude to the Chad Lake, which it is low altitude by at least 100 to 150 meter. Then from the Chad Lake, we divert the water to South Egypt, North Sudan, and Libya. So 4 countries can benefit out of this project: the Chad, Egypt, Sudan, and Libya. So if World Bank can invest in such project, I think this will be will change the economy and the life of these 4 countries. Okay, this is a tunnel I propose from this area, goes to the Chad, and from the Chad we can have one branch go to Sudan, other go to Egypt, other go to Libya. All right. So what we hope to transfer is at least 10% of the water which drain in Atlantic Ocean. They drain around 1,000 billion cubic meter. We are looking only for 100 billion cubic meter, which will revive these 4 countries and the population there. All right. So this is a mega project which need a lot of investment, and that can be done by World Bank. Okay, the other solution I propose, it is having a network transportational road between Egypt, mainly Alexandria, and Cape Town in Sudan, and this been proposed by Egyptian government because we need to cooperate not only in terms of water supply. No, it's also we need to cooperate to increase the interrelation between the people first, then the government, by producing something like free market. So why not Tanzanian fruit to be sold in Egypt? Or why not Tanzanian fruit can export to Europe through Alexandria? So building a road network between Nile countries or Nile basin country extend to even Nile countries like Cape Town and South Sudan, that will really improve the life of the people who the road pass through it, and also will economically will increase or will really have a great impact. And through this road we can have free market. Why not we don't have free market? We should have a free market for the Nile basin country, somewhere in Sudan here, for example. All right, so we can have more access to African product, to Europe, to America, with cheap transportation. All right, Congo, for example, we produce a lot of fishery, a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetable can directly export to Europe through this road. So this is some of the my proposal to solve the problem. So in conclusion, I will read it straight away. The Nile basin countries should seek to build confidence and capacity across the basin through a shared benefit of the Nile River. They should plan to implement projects in partnership with member states that will contribute to strengthen the cooperation mechanism and to long-term sustainability development in terms of economic growth, regional integration. They should contribute to the creation of enabling environment for investment and action on the ground, and that will promote and share benefit through the set of effective basin wide activities. They should apply projects which contribute to water efficiency, integrated water resources management, confidence building between peoples of the Nile basin country, and increase the awareness to achieve their objective and expected impact. Lastly is to improve the hydropower production and irrigation efficiency, leading to an overall increase in land productivity, which will yield higher agriculture output and enhance the food security in the countries. Number 7, integrated and joint basin management offer to the greatest opportunity to unlock economic growth, promote regional integration, and realizing the realize the peace and stability in the basin countries. Number 8, to identify steps to increase food security through increasing investment, income integration, and economic growth. This is my conclusion, and the key word here is integration. Integration, not confrontation, is the ultimate solution for Nile Basin country. This is my final recommendation, and thank you very much. Thank you.